are renters. Ownership remains, well, a pipe dream. Renters between right around 2000 and 2016, renters who made $30,000 to $50,000 a year paid more than a third of their incomes to landlords. The threshold for qualifying as what the government calls rent burdened. And that increased up to 50% for those making only $15,000. The figure rose to 83%. Public housing and housing vouchers are supposed to make housing affordable to low-income households, but the supply of public housing hasn't remotely matched the demand. The bottom line is that more than 75% of at-risk renters, that's those people who the cost of rent exceeds a third of their earnings, doesn't match the assistance from the government. The real risk for them is to become homeless, which means relying on shelters or family and friends who are willing to take them in. President Trump's proposed budget will make life even harder by cutting funds for low-income workers who are looking for affordable housing. His 2019 budget, for example, proposes slashing nearly $7 billion from the resources of the Department of Housing and Urban Development by, among other things, scrapping housing vouchers and assistance to low-income families who are already struggling to pay heating bills. The president also decided that his Rich Come First tax reform bill is virtually guaranteed to produce, well, and set the stage for more cuts in the future. In other words, what we have is the United States of inequality. The very phrases low-income workers and affordable houses have ceased to go together. Now, none of this seems to have troubled or bothered the HUD Secretary Ben Carson, who happily ordered a $31,000 dining room set for his office suite at taxpayer expense, even as he visited new public housing units to make sure that they weren't too comfortable because, we don't want the poor to settle in for long stays. Carson also declared that it's, quote, time to stop believing the problems of this society can be fixed merely by having the government throw extra money at them, unquote. I guess that doesn't include dining rooms, $31,000 dining rooms for people like him. I think it's time to rethink the American national security state with its annual trillion-dollar budget, or I should say multi-trillion-dollar budget now. For tens of millions of Americans, the source of deep workaday insecurity isn't the standard roster of foreign enemies, but an ever more entrenched system of inequality. Inequality, still growing. That stacks the political deck against the least well-off Americans. They lack the bucks to hire big-time lobbyists. They don't have or the ability to write lavish checks to candidates running for public office or fund PACs. They don't have any way to manipulate the myriad and influence-generating networks that the elite use to shape taxation and spending policies. They're up against a system which money truly does talk, and that's the voice they don't have. Welcome to the United States of inequality. Now, there are a couple of ways we could fix this. Since the 1990s, the ruling theory of business has been to add short-term value to a company's stock price, no matter what the cost is. And first up on that butcher's bill has been employees. Job security, pay raises, benefits, even being employed at all. Anything can go to goose the stock. Now that change in corporate values has profoundly affected communities, raised inequality, and hurt investment in the long-term health of corporations. Senator Elizabeth Warren proposes a remedy in what she calls her Accountable Capitalism Act. Among other things, it would require large companies to obtain a federal charter that obligates company directors to consider the interests of all corporate stakeholders. As in Germany, these companies would also have to provide worker participation. Not less than 40% of directors would be nominated by employees. Transaction and capital gains taxes could also be introduced and targeted to incentivize holding stocks for the long term and restrain buses by private equity. Another idea, and this is one that I like, would be to tax all stock trades at $1 a share, divided equally between buyer and seller. 50 cents is not a big deal, especially if you're a billionaire. Not only would this encourage more long-term investments, and that's good for the economy, it would also generate enough capital to fully finance universal health care, all higher education, increase construction of affordable housing, makes some serious investments into digital communications infrastructure, and with the savings enjoyed from those digital communications, lower the cost of K through 12 education to enough to build the roads and bridges that our nation is desperately in need of replacing. Not with temporary blacktop, but with self-repairing concrete estimated to last 200 years. Of course, my favorite method involves nationalizing banks. When the mortgage meltdown caused by banks during the Bush administration sent most of the world's nations into a fiscal nightmare, Finland they nationalized. Banks are already an institution, and who wants to work in an institution? They nationalized their banks and arrested their bankers and sent them straight to jail. At least the executive bankers. Now, every expert at the time swore that Finland would devolve into a third world nation by doing it. Instead, Finland recovered from the mortgage meltdown within only 5 years, while the rest of the world, including the United States, continued to struggle. To be honest, I think that we can do a lot better. Nationalizing banks is an idea that has worked everywhere it's been tried. It has worked in, I believe it's North Carolina has one, and they're now considering nationalizing all the banks in, I should say, is it nationalizing when a city does it? Well, Los Angeles is currently considering it. Government control of certain industries for the betterment of its people is not communism. It is using the industries that exist for the betterment of the people, all the people. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people seems to be quickly perishing from the earth. At least that's how it seems. So when we look to the future, let's look outside of the box. Let's consider, do we really need all those new nuclear weapons? I don't think so. We have enough already to destroy the entire planet several times over. So if we just stop building them, well, that would be roughly, I think it's been estimated somewhere on the order of $50 to $100 billion a year. That's enough money to pay for all the universal health care that you need and provide all the college expenses for free. Right there. If we were to add that $1 tax to the sale of shares of stock, that would be enough to take care of most of the rest of our government's needs. And like I said, a digital education, that is to say, well, how can I put this? The average state spends about $12,000 for every student, K through 12. If they could deliver that education digitally, not only would they save thousands of dollars per student, but the money that was saved could be used for other things. And now this is the kicker. They would no longer be beholden to what the Texas Department of Education said was suitable for education. That's right. By delivering those school books digitally, the costs would drop down below the cost of traditional school books. And by reducing those school book prices, all states would be allowed and able to, well, have any school books they liked. They would not have the education and the material dictated by a bunch of bureaucrats that they don't have anything to say about. They wouldn't have bureaucrats from some other state dictating how their kids should learn and what their kids should learn. In short, they would do away with what amounts to programming kids with bullshit. You know, speaking of bullshit, the Washington Post recently pointed out that Trump has told just over 2,100 lies in his first year, and he's doubled that since then. And, you know, I think that's nothing short of a miracle because, well, let's face it, nobody's ever seen that much bullshit come out of a horse's ass. I mean, before Trump. But I've yammered on enough for today, so I guess I'm going to have to wind this up until next week. Same weird batty channel, same batty time. Hey, by the way, if you haven't checked out the Fake News Network, well, I put out 2 articles a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You might want to check them out. So, I'll see you guys next week. This is Jennifer Warren for the Professional Dreamers Podcast, reminding you that if you're not a professional dreamer, you're probably a fascist, and fascists, well, let's face it, you already got what you want. You've got Trump. The rest of us, we're going to turn out to vote, because we will not shut up. I'll catch you later. I'm gone. Bye-bye.